A while back, I gave you the 10 most hated trucks in American history, and you gave it right back to me in the comments. But something funny happened down there. Almost nobody wanted to argue about trucks. You wanted to argue about engines, so let's do it properly. Not the disasters this time, the ones that earned their reputation. The engines that outlived the trucks they were bolted into, that got rebuilt 3 times and went back to work, that men still talk about at a counter 20 years after the last one rolled off the line. 10 greatest truck engines in American history. Counting down, and number 1 is going to start a fight. Number 10, the Cat 3306. This one never got the glory because it spent most of its life doing the unglamorous work. Vocational trucks, buses, generators, anything that had to start every morning and simply not quit. Inline 6, mechanical, straightforward, and built with the kind of margin engineers used to design in on purpose. You could work on it with hand tools and a shop manual, and your own judgment. The 3306 is on this list because it's the definition of what Cat's name used to mean. Not the fastest, not the loudest, just the one that was still running when everything around it had been scrapped. Number 9, the International DT466. And one of you named this one in the comments already. The DT466 was medium duty. Dump trucks, school buses, farm rigs, the stuff nobody makes videos about. And it might be the most quietly respected engine ever built in this country. Wet sleeves, rebuildable in the frame without pulling the engine, which meant when it finally got tired, you didn't shop for a new truck. You spent a couple of days in a parts kit and got another few 100,000 miles. International has taken a lot of criticism on this channel, and some of it was earned. But the same company built this. Credit where it's due. Number 8, the Detroit Diesel 8V71, the Screaming Jimmy, a 2-stroke V8 that fired twice as often as anything around it and sounded like it. You didn't hear a Jimmy arrive so much as feel it. Now, I put this engine on a list of the worst once and got told off for it, and both sides were right. It was thirsty, it was loud enough to cost men their hearing, and it smoked. But it also ran on nothing but its own stubbornness, went to war, pulled boats, powered half the equipment in America, and would take abuse that would end a 4-stroke on the spot. Some engines you respect. This one you argue about, and that's its own kind of greatness. Number 7, the Mack Maxidyne. And this one changed how driving actually worked. In 1966, Mack put the Maxidyne in the new R model. Before it, a diesel made its peak torque in a narrow band, and if you fell out of that band on a climb, you went hunting for gears. The Maxidyne made about 900 pound-feet down at 1200 RPM, with roughly a 50% torque rise. In plain terms, as the hill tried to slow you down, the engine pushed back harder instead of giving up. That's why Mack could hand you a 5-speed while everybody else was selling 10, 13, 15. You didn't need them. You picked a gear and let the engine handle the mountain. Number 6, the Cummins 855 Big Cam. Cummins put a bigger camshaft in the 855 in 1976, and what came out was one of the great mechanical diesels. Before computers, before sensors, before anything on your truck had an opinion about what you were doing. Everything on it could be adjusted by a man who understood it. Fuel, timing, valves. If you knew what you were doing, you could make it pull the way you wanted it to pull. If you didn't, it let you know. Ask a driver who ran one what he misses, and it won't be the horsepower. It'll be that the engine did exactly what he told it to, every time. Number 5, the Mack E7. By the late 80s, Mack had spent 20 years learning what the Maxidyne taught them, and the E7 was all of it in one package. Big torque, low down, a reputation for going a very long way between rebuilds, and that particular Mack character where the engine feels like it's leaning into the load instead of fighting it. If you ran a dump or a mixer or a log truck in the 90s, this is probably the engine under the hood in your memory. It didn't ask for much, it just went to work. Number 4, the Caterpillar 3406B. Mechanical, 14.6 liters. No electronics between your right foot and the fuel. The B is the one a lot of old hands will tell you was the best truck engine Cat ever built, and their argument is simple. It made honest power. You could fix it anywhere, and it kept running long past the point where the paperwork said it should have stopped. There's a whole industry today built on keeping these alive, and there's a reason for that. When a man can still buy parts for a 35-year-old engine, that tells you everything about what it meant to the people who ran it. Number 3, the Detroit Diesel Series 60, and this is the one that dragged the whole industry forward. In 1987, Detroit put out the Series 60, and it was the first heavy-duty diesel with fully integrated electronic controls. Overhead cam, a computer actually managing the fuel. Nobody had done that in a truck engine before, and here's what made it stick. It wasn't just clever, it was tough. Detroit started out telling people to plan an overhaul around 500,000 miles, and as the miles came in, they moved that to 750,000. That's the factory raising its own number because the engine kept beating it. It stayed in production until 2011, 24 years. In this business, that's a dynasty. Number 2, the Caterpillar 3406E. This is where Cat took everything the mechanical 3406 had earned and put electronics on top of it without ruining the character. More power, better fuel numbers, and it still felt like a Cat. For most of the 90s, if you were an owner-operator and you had the money, this is what you ordered. It was the badge on the side of the hood that said you were serious about this. And a lot of the men who are hardest on modern engines aren't comparing them to nothing. They're comparing them to this. And number 1, the Cummins N14. Some of you called it before I said it. It showed up in my comments the day I posted the hated trucks video from a man who put 660,000 miles on one and said it was still tight as a drum when they took it off him. That's the N14's whole reputation in one sentence. Enormous mileage, a top end you could actually work on, and power delivery that made a heavy load feel like it wanted to move. It's number 1 for a reason beyond that, though. The N14 was the last of its kind. What came after it wasn't chasing durability. It was chasing an emissions number. The N14 is the line in the sand. Everything before it was built to last, and everything after it was built to comply. That's the list. Now go ahead and tell me I'm wrong, because I know some of you have the 3406E at number 1, and some of you think a Series 60 beats both. So settle it in the comments. N14, 3406E, or Series 60? Pick one, and tell me the mileage you got out of it. That's the only argument that counts. And if you want more no-nonsense debates about the engines that earned their reputation mile after mile, subscribe to the channel. I'm Dale. Keep the shiny side up, and I'll see you down the road.